Good morning and welcome at the Consortia Building Workshop for AgriTech Catalyst Colombia call. My name is Lilia Serazidinova. I work for KTN. I work in the agri-food team. I'm very pleased to welcome you all here. We have a full audience. We are expecting, about 70 people here. It's my pleasure to open today's talks. So first of all, I would like to talk about health and safety. We're not expecting any fire drills today, so if the fire alarm sounds, can you please go back the way you came here from the front of the hotel? So basically you go out of that main door and go via the entrance on the street. So if you are looking for toilets, the quickest way from this room is through this door. And if you are downstairs, that would be also from the equivalent door. So lunch will be served downstairs where you had coffees and refreshments. So we were expecting to have a live webcast today, but we have just one person logged in. So we're recording all the presentations, and they will be all made available afterwards on KTN website, as well as the presentations themselves. So that we just need to bear this in mind, during the Q&A, so that we speak clearly in the microphone, so that it's then audible later. Okay, just a brief introduction to KTN. So KTN is working very closely with Innovate UK. Innovate UK is a non-departmental public body which is funded by Department of Business, Environment and Industrial Strategy, and they are UK's innovation agency. We work with Innovate UK. We are an innovation network, and we are supporting activities of Innovate UK. So Innovate UK is developing strategy for how to support businesses in innovation, and we are people on the ground, so we're meeting businesses, we're advising them, we're helping them, but we are independent of them. And we are delivering a lot of briefing events for their competitions, as well as we're running our own events. Just to introduce KTN, we are an innovation network. We are connecting people and we're helping companies to progress on their innovation journey by various ways, finding markets, identifying technologies which can help them, and identifying funding and finance and helping them to access those. So we're running a lot of events like today's, but also we're running thematic networks in different sectors. We meeting businesses one-to-one. We advising them, introducing them to other collaborators. So if after this event you would find it useful to talk to us about your project idea, if you're missing a partner, if you don't know where the facility might be which you need, please do talk to us. And we also have a dedicated team helping businesses to access funding and finance. That includes grants, but also equity and angel investments and various types of finance. And we have also a team working on design. This is also quite applicable for agri-food applications when developing products and services. And we're still providing guidance with the European programs. And we're still encouraging companies to apply for European funding. We're also running various projects and doing road mapping exercises to identify the best ways for companies to progress in specific areas. We work with research councils, universities, with private companies, helping them on their innovation journey. So today, the aim of the event is for you to learn more about the scope of the competition and the rules. To learn about the opportunities within Colombian agriculture, where your particular skills, expertise, facilities might help them to advance. And also for you as a UK company to benefit from a huge market opportunities and new connections. We will help you to understand what makes a good project. Here today you have representatives from Innovate UK talking about it, and KTN colleagues which can help you afterwards. And we also help you here to meet a lot of new people and identify their expertises. I want to draw your attention to the document which was sent around yesterday to all of you, called capabilities and expertise document, which lists all participants' interests and capabilities, what partners they're looking for. So that's very helpful. You can also browse it after the event. We will have short delegate pitches. to basically pitch the idea for a project, and we'll have plenty of networking. And today in the audience we have my colleagues. We have Debbie Tully. Debbie, she might be just outside helping with registration, so you saw her there. Anita. Anita is a main organizer of the event, and she will be also sending you all follow-up information about the presentations. We have here Jess, who is helping with the webcast and will be helping with questions. Okay, so just a note, so we have a presentation from the CIAT today, later by video. CIAT is the International Center for Tropical Agriculture. It will be delivered by Andrew Jarvis. It is pre-recorded as a video, but we will have a facility for you to pose questions to him. And you can do that by emailing questions to Jess. In a lunchtime, I will put up Jess' email address on the screen, and you can email your question, and she will relate it back to Andy, and we will have the answers for the afternoon Q&A for that. So just to bear in mind. And pitch presentations, I allow only 5 minutes for each presenter, so we will not be able to have any questions. All questions in the lunch break and later. And I will be very strict to keep to the time. I think we have 13 pitches. Yeah, use the networking session to find the speakers afterwards. The networking session will be in 2 parts. It will be roundtable introductions, how you see it or how you will come back after lunch, and then it will be speed networking. So again, try to browse the delegate capabilities list to find out people who you want to talk to. It should help, or ask us if you know somebody on the list but you don't know how they look like. Anita and Debbie were at the registration. They'll probably remember people, and myself, I know quite a few people here, so we can signpost you to those. So a few words about the partnering mission to Colombia. As part of this competition, Katie and together with CIAT running a partnering mission to Colombia between 4th and 8th of June. Up to 15 UK organizations delegates will be offered a funded place. So the mission is designed to build a greater understanding of the challenges of Colombian agriculture and to build collaborations. It will be designed to have some visits, but also plenty of networking time and project building time. And we are taking applications currently. The deadline for applications is 11th of April. And you can submit your application by following a link. The link you will be able to access from the presentation, but I also can explain to you that if you go on a KTN website and search for Colombia Catalyst Call, there will be a link to the application form, or just talk to any of us afterwards. We can show you where to find it. And I believe if you go on Innovate UK website, you will also get link through to the KTN website for the mission and to the application form. You should be able to find it. We will be selecting participants via assessment panel, so it will be a robust assessment process. And yeah, we will notify successful delegates probably on 19th of April, and we'll start working with those on the program. So the idea is that the mission will take place in June, and between April and June we're hoping to develop more concrete project ideas with which you can go to Colombia and meet people you really would benefit for your project. So it will be a bit more targeted. So in your application, if you are not sure yet about who your partners should be, it's still fine, but we have time to develop those understanding in the meantime. So we hope this mission will be more detailed for project development. So and now I will hand over to our first speakers from Innovate UK.
Thanks very much, Lilia, and thanks to the KTN for organising today. And it's really positive to see so many people here with us for this UK-Colombia partnership we're developing through the Prosperity Fund. I'm Tom Jenkins. I'm going to go through some background to Innovate before handing over to Ian Holmes, my colleague, who will talk about the competition specifically. But just to say, we are the UK's innovation agency. If you like, the UK commercial sector is our primary customer, and we're here to try and drive new commercial opportunities for UK businesses. We do that primarily through fund and connect activities, but we also do work in partnership with the research space and research councils as well. And this just gives some high-level stats about the impact we've had through our activity since 2007, when we started as a TSB. So we've invested 2.2 billion. We've leveraged about 1.5 billion from the private sector. We have an ROI of about 7 to 1 for every pound we invest. We've helped to create 70,000 jobs. On average, that's through about 8 jobs with each organisation that works with us. And in terms of the agri-food sector, we funded in a dedicated way through the Sustainable Agri-Food Innovation Platform in 2010. And this activity was really looking at ways in which we could enhance productivity right across the agri-food sector, whilst also decreasing the environmental impact of food production. And that was a 5-year programme with 90 million investments. We ran a series of challenge-led or thematic programmes. So this was a series of competitions over those 5 years. Things like ways in which we could enhance crop protection strategies in the backdrop of changing regulations in Europe, ways in which we could enhance sustainable protein production within the UK to reduce our reliance on imports, and things like reducing waste in the food processing and manufacturing sector. And then in 2013, the government announced the AgriTech strategy, and this provided an additional 160 million investment, primarily through an AgriTech Catalyst and also Centres for Agricultural Innovation. And this was really looking at ways in which we could pull through research and expertise, translate that into impacts in the agri-tech industry within the UK, but also looking internationally as well. And within this, we had 5 rounds of domestic opportunity and a 6th with DFID funding, and we supported 126 primarily industry-led collaborative research projects. We've had funding from BBSRC and through the industrial strategy to support both the UK research base and industry, but the DFID funding was looking at ways in which we could utilise UK expertise in partnership with developing country partners to address challenges that they face in those outside of the UK environments, to really try and take forward some of the ODA obligations we have through the DFID funding to support developing country agriculture and enhance productivity for the benefit of those partners. In terms of the centres, we've got 4 centres up and running now, and very broadly these work around crops, livestock, precision engineering and diagnostics, and big data and agrimetrics. They are very embedded in terms of working closely with the industry sector. We might hear a bit more about those later on with view to Agri Epicentre through Dave Ross, but they're here very much to develop cutting-edge world capability and look at ways in which we can test and trial and pull things through into practice to benefit the UK agri-tech sector, but also looking outside of that internationally as well, and how we can start to develop partnerships to benefit the UK, but other territories outside of the UK as well. And this just gives you a bit of an insight to where they're based geographically around the UK. And more recently, the government's announced the industrial strategy, and this represents a really significant major new investment of funding in R&D. Around this, one of the major investment pillars, if you like, is the Industrial Strategy Challenge Fund, which represents 4.7 billion of new money up to the end of this parliamentary term, so 2020-2021. And through this, we've got, through Wave 2, a transforming food production challenge area, which was announced by Greg Clark at the NFU conference earlier this year. And this is really looking at ways in which we can increase productivity whilst recognising that we want to also enhance and improve sustainability across that agri-food sector. And within this, we're looking at, if you like, a range of different ways in which we can deliver this type of activity. There is an emphasis, if you like, around precision and precision type approaches, although we are still looking at a range of different technologies. And the main thrust of how that will be delivered is through 4 main activities, if you like. There's collaborative R&D, which again is likely to be industry-led research projects, 2 to 3 years duration. There will be challenge platforms as well, which are likely to be delivered by the research base, but working in partnership with stakeholders to identify core needs that we need to deliver upon. There will also be demonstration type activities, which are really looking towards testing and trialling in a real environment, ways in which we can take advanced precision type approaches to enhance productivity. And there's also an international element, which is looking in the first instance at ways in which we can develop partnerships with Canada and China. But that's very much the, if you like, the backdrop to what we've been doing in the UK around the agri-food side of things. Today we're here very much to talk about the Prosperity Fund programme and funding that's become available to develop partnerships with Colombia. And I'm going to hand over to my colleague Ian that's going to go through this specific competition in a bit more detail, and he'll then pass over to our colleagues in competitions who will talk about the application process itself and how to get good quality applications in. Thanks very much.
Good morning, I'm Ian Holmes. The funding we're talking about today is coming from the Colombian Prosperity Fund programme. It's a little bit different to other programmes that we've run through Innovate UK, so you need to pay attention to the subtle differences. You will be able to download the presentations in a couple of days' time, and all the links will work, so you may want to do a bit of background reading on some of the extra links. So the Prosperity Fund for Colombia aims to support economic development, economic opportunities, and drive growth in post-conflict and conflict-affected regions within Colombia. The programme overall is quite big, and it would benefit over 3 million people across Colombia, with a specific focus on women and girls in Colombia's poorest regions. The programme itself has 7 activities across a range of areas, including infrastructure, institutional strengthening, and agriculture. And it's part of the UK's official development assistance programme. And it's, the way this is deployed is a significant change in the way that we've used our ODA resources, helping countries grow and develop, and making them more prosperous. So now I'm going to go a little bit more into the competition detail. The documents are already online, the guide for applicants and the competition brief. UK and Colombian businesses, not-for-profit organisations and research organisations, that's either academic organisations or RTOs, can apply for a share of £3 million to support the uptake of new technologies and innovations in the Colombian agriculture sector. Again, with a strong focus on helping female smallholder farmers. The scope is quite broad. The main focus is to help Colombian farmers adopt agricultural innovations more rapidly. We're looking at things that projects which address primary livestock production, and that can include aquaculture, food security and nutritional challenges, and challenges in downstream food processing, providing the solutions lie in activities around primary production. All proposals must demonstrate the potential to advance sustainable intensification of Colombian agriculture, as well as delivering economic impact across the agri-tech industry. And we have the right to fund a portfolio of projects, so we won't, for example, we won't just be funding all of the projects in coffee. We will be looking across the ones which come in to give us a portfolio of different projects and technologies. The projects which we are supporting, there are 2 types of projects. There's early stage feasibility projects, which are looking at the commercial potential of an early stage scientific idea through a feasibility study. And there are also late stage awards, which are experimental development projects, and they will evaluate or trial the commercial potential of an idea in effectively a real life environment. And that will be sort of the stage before large-scale deployment of the technology. Early stage awards can have total project costs between £150,000 to £500,000 and last up to 18 months. And late stage awards, total project costs between £200,000 and £800,000. All projects must be started by March 2019 and can last up to 18 months. This just gives you an idea of whereabouts the projects are sitting. The early stage feasibility ones are around this area, and the late stage ones are around here in the experimental development. So early stage feasibility studies, well, all of the projects must be led by a UK, by the UK. For the early stage projects, UK business, not-for-profit, or any of the research organisations can be the lead. All projects must involve at least one Colombian partner. In this case, it can be from business, not-for-profit, or research organisations. The total combination of your research organisation costs must not exceed 50% of the total project costs. And there's a sliding scale of funding for businesses depending on the size of the business. 70% of eligible costs for micro or small businesses, 60% for medium, and 50% for large businesses. Research organisations will be funded at 100%, and UK academics will be funded at, through GES 80% full economic cost. So the way we work for the funding, it's what we call our hub and spoke method. So all projects must be led by the UK organisation, and the funding for the work undertaken by the Colombia partners will be made available via the UK lead through the hub and spoke model. Project costs will be made quarterly in arrears for incurred and defrayed costs, and they will be released after quarterly monitoring meetings. The late-stage experimental development projects, these are very much market-focused, deployment-focused, so they must be led by a UK-based business, and they must involve at least one Colombian business or not-for-profit partner. Research organisations can only participate in the late-stage projects as subcontractors. And again, as these projects are significantly nearer to market, the amount of funding is slightly less. 45% of eligible project costs for micro and small businesses, 35% for medium-sized businesses, and 25% for large businesses. So the scope and the impact in Colombia. Areas that we're particularly interested in are projects which can integrate smallholders into either existing supply chains or create new supply chains and enable them to meet quality standards and improve their productivity. We're looking at projects to improve sustainability outcomes in Colombia, reducing the environmental impact of various farming practices, crops, livestock or aquaculture, or help reduce deforestation. We're looking at projects which can increase the value of production to smallholders, encourage the use of digital agriculture applications in Colombia through the use of big data innovations or information services for farmers. And again, we have a focus on female smallholder farmers. And also looking at innovations that increase rural income through things such as improved processing or storage. And there's also the help to control pests, disease and weeds. Because it's funded through the ODA, all projects have to conform within the official development assistance criteria, and also with this project it has to fit with the International Development Gender Equality Act. And again, the hyperlinks in the presentation work, so you can read up the additional things on there. But the main thing to bear in mind is that only research which is directly and primarily relevant to the target country will be counted as ODA. However, research conducted in the UK which is relevant is included. There's a couple of tables here. There is a slight error on option 10 on this one, which we will amend before the presentation is downloadable. But this gives you an idea of the eligible partnerships for the early stage feasibility projects, and a similar table for the late stage experimental. As you can see, I've highlighted that research organisations can only take part as a subcontract in these ones. Just going to hand over to Tom now, and he's just going to talk through a couple of examples of previous Catalyst funding projects.
Thanks very much, Ian. Yeah, so we've just got a couple of slides to give you a flavour of the types of projects that have been taken forward in the past through the DFID funding. So this is an early stage project. It was looking at ways in which we could take genes which provided resistance in rice crops to late blight and blast. So this was from more indigenous rice varieties and trying to transfer those through molecular assisted selection into some of the higher value aromatic rice varieties. And that involved people from Bangor universities that had previous DFID funding and partners in Nepal. So that just gives you a bit of a feel for the sorts of things we've funded in the past. And for a late stage project, this was looking at a project led by Russell IPM that were looking at integrated pest management strategies to control fruit fly pests in a range of different territories. So this was using proven technology which they had commercialized in the Mediterranean and parts of the Middle East, and trying to get that fit for purpose for territories in Bangladesh and Africa as well. And that's led to them marketing new products and really increasing productivity, but also reducing the impact of pesticides which were no longer needed. So it's just to give you a few examples. Obviously, these are both looking at crops. The scope is much broader than that. We will look at livestock and aquaculture in addition to crop type applications. But it was just to try and give you a bit of a differentiation of the types of things that have gone before. It's in no way meant to influence your thinking, just to try and be helpful to stimulate thoughts. Okay. We just got a few slides, so I'll just finish off. The other thing we wanted to highlight was all of the projects will need to have a collaboration agreement in place before you're able to go live. So if you are ranked highly and selected for funding, you need to have this signature by all of the partners on the project. This is really to protect and safeguard everybody. It's really to detail how people are going to benefit commercially from the project. We, as a funder, would not describe what you should look towards, but we would point you towards the Lambert Agreement in the first instance. But I think the advice is start thinking about this early when you're putting the application together, because it's the one thing that tends to hold up the projects the most before they can actually get started and get the work undertaken. There will be due diligence checks, so this will involve both the UK partners to check that they are economically viable, but there will also be due diligence checks undertaken for any Colombian partners as well. And we need to make sure, because we part fund particularly industry partners, that people are in a position to be able to take forward that work. So it's just to make you aware that those are other checks. Even if you're successful in being given what we'd call a conditional offer letter, there are checks that need to go in place before you would move to what we would call a grant confirmation letter and giving you the green light to go ahead and take forward the work. As Lilia mentioned before, there is also a partnering mission going out to Colombia for June time. This is being led by the KCN and will be delivered in partnership with CIAT on the ground in Colombia. We have a finite budget for this, so there are a limited number of places, but there is an opportunity to apply for that through an expression of interest, and that will be reviewed, and the best, most appropriate people will be invited to take part in that mission. And we're really looking at ways in which we can try and further develop partnerships with people on the ground in Colombia through that UK mission to Colombia. And then finally, if you've got any specific questions, you can talk to myself or Ian today. We need you to put anything official through the Innovate UK help desk. So if you've got any specifics, please put in an email. We need to make sure that those are tracked. Or if you've got interest in taking forward an application, the KCN can provide a free confidential review of the application. They can't write anything from the bottom up, but if you get in touch with them, they could be able to give you a sort of a critical friends type review to try and get your application in the best form possible to secure the funding. So we've got Lilia's details here as the first point of contact, but she will have colleagues at the KCN that she could potentially put you in touch with as well in different subsectors, if you like, of the agri-tech area. And I think that's it from us on the scope side of things. So we're going to hand over to colleagues from the competitions team that will go through the application process, the rules and eligibility in a bit more detail for you.
So good morning everybody, my name is Melissa Hughes. I'm a portfolio manager at Innovate UK and I am managing this competition. With me today is Helen Feather, the portfolio manager team leader, and between us we will be taking you through the application process for this competition. So the agenda, so we will cover the eligibility criteria, just recapping what Ian's already gone through, the application process, including the application form, funding, project costs, how to submit your application, and then later on we will have a Q&A session. So just to recap on the eligibility criteria, so we've got two stages, so we've got early stage feasibility and late stage experimental development. It's a single stage competition and both stages are collaborative, so you need to involve Colombian partners. So for early stage feasibility, the lead must be a UK-based business or research organisation. However, for late stage, the lead must be just a UK-based business. Feasibility costs can be between 150 to 500,000, with late stage 200,000 to 800. Both streams have project lengths of up to 18 months, and you all complete the same 10-mark questions with appendices, and GES outputs. GES documents are also applicable. So what is collaboration? So when submitting your application, there must be evidence of a genuine collaboration. So you'll need to explain in your application form how all parties will contribute to the project and benefit from the collaboration. So at Innovate UK, we define a collaboration as two organisations claiming funding. And again, just to reiterate, you need to have one UK and at least one Colombian partner. So when applying for multiple projects, so any one business or research organisation may lead on one application, and that's across both streams, and partner in a maximum of a further 2. However, for a research organisation, you can lead only on early stage, but you must have 2 business collaborators. If you're not a lead on any application, then you can partner in any number of applications that you so wish. So again, just to reiterate what's already been said, so due to the nature of this competition, there are certain additional eligibility criteria for this competition. It is all documented in the guidance for applicants, which you'll be able to find online. So these are the types of organisations that Innovate UK fund. So we've got businesses, small, medium or large, and research organisations broken down into universities, not-for-profit, and catapults, and then also public sector organisations. So for this competition, early stage awards, so research-based partner costs must not exceed 50% of your total project costs, and if you have more than one research organisation within your consortium, you will share this amount between you. For late stage awards, UK and Colombian research-based partners can only participate as subcontractors to a business partner. So these are the key dates for this competition. So the competition has already gone live. Registration for the competition closes 1 week before the deadline, so the 18th of July, and the submission deadline is noon on the 25th of July. That's a hard deadline, so please do submit your application in good time. And applicants will be informed by the 7th of September. So moving on to the application process. So all of the information for this competition can be found on our online digital platform on our gov.uk website. So it's the Innovation Funding Service, or IFS for short. All the information that we've covered today will be there. There's also the guidance for applicants for you to refer to. We also have guidance on project costs, so everything you need is online. If you're interested in applying for the competition, then you just simply click on the big green button, register, and apply online, and you'll get all the necessary information, and Helen will cover the next steps of what happens when you click that button later on. So the application form, as always, please refer to the competition guidance. It will have much more detailed information on there for you to refer back to. But the application form is split into 3 different sections, and then we've got the scope and the finance summary table. All questions are equally marked, they're equally weighted and scored out of 10, and you need to answer using Arial font size 10. So project summary. Here we require you to provide a summary of the project, including its innovation. It sets the scenes for the assessors. It's not scored. However, it is a mandatory section for you to complete. Equally, public description of your project. Again, this isn't marked, but we do require it. So here you just need to provide a summary of your project that you'd be happy to be published if your project was successful. So please just be aware of confidential information when you fill this section in. So then we have the question regarding scope. So how well does the project fit with the competition? This part of the application is marked yes or no. In the first instance, if you have any questions relating to if your project falls within scope, please feel free to contact our competitions help desk, and your query will be directed to the relevant person, so either Ian or Tom. So we need you to identify how your project fits within the scope. So you can have a really innovative project, but if it doesn't fit within the scope, then you won't be eligible to receive funding. So please therefore give plenty of detail for the assessors as to why your project fits. So moving on to section 1, which covers the business proposition and is split down into 4 questions, so I'll go through those in turn now. So question 1 relates to the business opportunity that this project addresses. So here we're looking for you to outline the business opportunity and what the project team needs to do successfully to address it within the preferred timeframes and costs. And we're also looking for you to describe the nature of the problems or issues that you're facing and or your potential customers, and how will the intended outputs of your project respond to these problems and issues. Question 2 relates to the size of the market opportunity that your project might open up. So we're looking for you to include details of the current nature of the specific market that your project is targeted, the dynamics of the market, including its current size, actual and predicted growth rates. And importantly, we're looking for you to describe how you will add value to the economy of Colombia and or the UK or European Economic Area. So where possible, please give evidence of your statements about the target market for project outcomes, and outline your strategy for developing market share. Question 3, so how will the results of your project be exploited and disseminated? So we're looking for you to list or describe the potential exploitable outputs of the project, such as products or services, processes, etc. And then we're looking for you to also mention how outputs will be exploited, including, where applicable, the route to market, protection of IP. Research organisations who are involved in a project and funded for undertaking non-economic activity need to provide evidence in their answer of plans to disseminate their project outputs over a reasonable timescale. Question 4 specifically relates to how your project is eligible for ODA funding and how it is compliant with the International Development Gender Equality Act. So there's a lot of information in this question, and again I would refer you to the general guidance for applicants, which you can find online. So we're looking for you to include information including what beneficial outputs your project is expected to deliver, both inside and outside of your consortium, including economic and social welfare development and gender equality in Colombia, and over what timescale. Proposals will be considered out of scope if they do not show how they aim to ensure sustainable development and thereby contribute to a reduction in poverty, or if they improve the welfare of people in Colombia, including considering the impact on gender issues. Again, all this information you can refer back to in the general guidance. So moving on to section 2, again 4 questions, all equally weighted. So question 5, we're looking for you to explain the technical approach that you'll adopt and how the project will be managed. So we're just looking for you to give an overview of the technical approach, including the main objectives of your work. Assessors are looking to see that you've covered the technical approach and methodology, and that they're appropriate to the needs of the project, and that the innovative steps are achievable through the proposed approach, and that the project plan is sufficient for the complexity of the project. And here you're able to provide an optional appendix to support your answer, such as a project plan or a Gantt chart. Question 6. Here we need you to explain what is innovative about your project. So assessors will be looking to see if it pushes boundaries over and beyond current leading science and technology. Are you looking to apply existing technologies in new areas? And then describe any evidence you have to back up that your intended work is innovative. So you could include the results of patent searches, competitor analysis, and surveys, etc. And again, you also have the optional appendix. Question 7 relates to risks. And what is your project risk management strategy? Here you're also able to submit an optional appendix such as a risk register. So we're looking for you to explain your risks and rank them high, medium or low. And we're looking for you to explain your mitigation strategy. So how do you plan to avoid these risks identified? And what project management tools and mechanisms will you be using to help minimise operational risks? Question 8. Does your project team have the right skills, experience and access to facilities to deliver the identified benefits? So here we're looking to see who's involved and why you're using them. What their track record is, are they capable? Do you have the right mix of skills? We're looking for you to also provide evidence of additional benefits that come from the collaboration, such as increased knowledge transfer. If you're using subcontractors, here we're looking for you to justify why you're using them, and also identify the project management tools and mechanisms. And lastly, section 3, which has just 2 questions. So question 9 is relating to the financial commitment required for this project. So here, please don't simply write out the financial table. You need to detail your costs, so your consortium contributions and what Innovate UK needs to provide. You need to justify any odd or large costs, and you need to show that costs are realistic to your project plan and have been justified adequately. Please include all your information regarding costs here, as assessors don't have visibility of your finance forms. And lastly, question 10 relates to additionality. So how does the financial support from Innovate UK and its funding partners add value to your project? So here we're looking for you to explain why the funding is required for the project, and how Innovate UK funding would allow you to undertake the project differently. So for example, could you complete your work quicker, on a larger timescale, etc. And why this project would be beneficial to the UK. And then finally, you've got the finance summary tables. It's a high-level finance document. The assessors do have visibility of this, and you need to complete all 8 sections, as you can see on the screen there. Lastly, appendices that are applicable for this competition. So appendices A to C are optional. Please don't use them as a continuation of your answer. They're there to support your answer. Please ensure they're submitted in the correct format and to the specified length. Anything over will not be sent out to assessment. Appendix D and E are mandatory. So Appendix D is there to demonstrate how the project as a whole complies with ODA and the Gender Equality Act. And Appendix E is an up-to-date draft of your collaboration agreement. Again, you can find more information on this in the guidance, and we also provide a template collaboration agreement online. I will now hand you over to Helen, who will take you through funding and the next steps of submitting your application forward.
Hi, good morning everybody. So I'm going to go through the funding rules now and go over the costs that you can and can't claim for in this competition. If you've applied to Innovate UK before, then you'll hopefully find these rules very familiar. It's the same rules that we use across all of our competitions. So the amount of grant that you can claim, it depends on the type of organisation you are, and as we've already said, which stream of the AgriTech Catalyst you're applying into. And this is the same whether you're a UK partner or a Colombian partner. So the grant is awarded to individual partners within the project consortium. There's no overall limit within your project costs of how much grant can be awarded. It's limited by each partner. So if you're a business, for the early stage projects, you can receive 70% if you're a small or micro, 60% if you're a medium, and 50% if you're a large. And then for the late stage projects, those rates are lower as it's closer to market. And so you would need to match fund the remainder of that, of your project costs. If you're a research organisation, you can claim 100% of your costs. Now, the exception for this is for UK universities who apply through the GES system. They can claim 80% of their full economic costs, and I'll run through the GES system in a moment. If you are a research organisation, you will need to explain in the application how you plan to disseminate the work that you've done on the project, and make sure that's really clear. You need to be able to evidence that you're going to be disseminating your particular work in order to receive 100% funding. If you're a public sector organisation or a charity, again, you can receive 100% of your eligible costs. And again, you need to explain how you will disseminate the work that you've done. And if you are a public sector organisation, just be careful that you're not claiming for any costs which are already funded by public money, as those wouldn't be eligible. Now, if you do have any partners within your consortium who don't wish to claim grant, then that's fine. Remember, the lead must claim grant, and you must have at least 2 partners who are claiming grant within your consortium. But if there's any additional organisations that want to join but don't want to seek funding, then you should still explain what their role will be in the project and explain what they'll be doing. List the costs that they'll be contributing to the project in your finance summary table, and those costs will still contribute to the overall total project cost limits. They won't need to complete a finance form, and they won't be named in the offer letter if your project is successful. So moving on to the project costs that you can claim for. So this applies to basically all partners other than UK academics. So there's 7 categories, and each partner will need to fill in a finance form breaking down the categories for their proportion of the total project costs. So I will go through those categories now. So as I mentioned, there's a project finance form which you'll be able to download once you register for the competition, and each partner will need to complete that, apart from UK academics who will go through the GES system. So we appreciate there's a lot of forms to fill in, and if you have applied to us recently and you've used our new online system, unfortunately this competition is on the old system, so it is back to spreadsheets and Word documents, unfortunately. We are working on getting all of our competitions online, but this one is running on the old system. So you'll need to download a finance form from the FTP site, which is an Excel sheet, and you'll need to fill that in. Please do double check that the costs that you've put in there match the costs that you've put into your application form, as if those costs are different, it could mean you get offered the wrong amount of grant. It can lead to delays further down the line. So just double check that you have put the same costs across all the various forms that we ask you to complete. So the first category is labour costs. So you can claim for the cost of any staff who are working directly on the project. In the UK, they need to be paid through PAYE. And you can claim for national insurance, pension and non-discretionary costs. You cannot claim for dividends, bonuses or any time when they're not working on the project. So you just list out the role of that person on the project, how many people there are doing that role, what their salary is, and how many days they'll be working, and that will calculate your labour costs. Next we have overheads. So there's 2 ways that you can calculate these. You can either just select 20% of your labour costs, which is the most straightforward option and the quickest way of doing it, or you can calculate your overheads and break those down in the form. So if you do want to break those overheads down, there's 2 different categories. So indirect overheads are the costs relating to the administration of your project. So that would be people, for example, in HR or in finance who are spending a proportion of their time working on the project. You can claim for that time and for the overheads relating to those staff. And then you also have direct overheads. So these are things that are directly attributable to the project and the people working directly on the project, such as office utilities, IT, etc. So you'll need to provide a detailed breakdown of those costs, and that will be looked at by our finance team when they come to check your eligible costs. We then have material costs, so any materials that you need to purchase to use directly in the project, list them here, say what the quantity is, how much they cost, and that will then calculate your materials costs. Then with capital equipment, so this is if you need to purchase any capital equipment or you're using any equipment which you'll be sharing with your business as usual operations, then you can claim for the depreciation of that equipment for the time it will be used on the project. So explain what the item is, the value at the start of the project, what you expect the value to be at the end of the project, and then you can claim for that difference. Subcontracts is the next one. So if you do plan to use any subcontractors, you'll need to list them out on this section of the form and tell us how much you'll be paying those subcontractors and briefly describe the role that they'll be taking within the project. Now, assessors don't see this form. This is for Innovate UK to use to do our checks on your costs. So remember that if you do need to explain in your application form as well the role of any subcontractors and what they'll be doing on the project. So just remember that you'll need to put that in both places. And then travel and subsistence, so any travel and subsistence costs relating directly to your project. So for example, travelling to meet with your project partners, which I imagine would be relevant in this competition. You can list out the travel and subsistence costs there, and that will then calculate that value for you. And then finally, other costs is any other costs, obviously, which you haven't put into those other categories which you're going to incur on this project. If you have a look at our guidance online, that give you a bit more of a breakdown of what can and can't come under this heading. And just some things to be aware of that you cannot claim for. So you can't claim for recoverable VAT, interest charges, bad debts, profits, advertising, entertainment. You can't claim for hire purchase interest or any service charges associated with that. Profit earned by a subsidiary or an associate, so if you're subcontracting, for example, to a sister company, that would have to be at cost. You can't claim for any profit within that subcontract. You can't claim for any inflation or contingency, so please do make sure your costs are as accurate as possible because you can't claim for those contingency costs. Any existing assets, so anything you already own, you can't claim for. And if you will be asked to produce an independent accountant's report if you're successful, and you can't claim for those costs. So just some things to be aware of. Before I move on, there is the project cost guidance on our website, which, especially if you haven't applied to us before, that's a really useful document which goes into a bit more detail about all of those categories and what is and isn't eligible within them. So if you're not sure how to fill in the form, there's some helpful guidance on our website. And obviously, if you're still not sure, then do get in touch with our customer support team. So for UK academic partners, they will need to apply through the GES system. So we use the GES system, although it's owned by the research councils, we do use that to validate all academic costs and collect those costs. So they will need to apply through there. So when they go into to the system and fill that in, that will then calculate their full economic cost, and they can claim for 80% of that full economic cost within this project. Which is the same as Research Council guidelines around funding academics. And so any rules that you're familiar with, if you've applied to Research Councils for funding, Innovate UK follow the same rules. So that 20% difference shouldn't appear anywhere in your project costs. So the academics' proportion of the project costs should just be reflected as the 80% of their full economic costs. I hope that makes sense. It's a lot of percentages. And as well as providing the financial information, we also ask you to provide justification of resources and pathways to impact, as those are looked at by the assessors as well when they look at your application. If you do have any queries about filling in the GES form, it's best to contact the GES help desk directly. As I said, we don't own that system, so they'll be best placed to help answer any queries around it. And you will need to make sure that that GES form is uploaded with the rest of your application documents to Innovate UK. So it doesn't automatically get sent to us from the GES system. You do need to make sure it's been submitted in enough time before the deadline that you can then download the PDF and provide that to us. So how to submit your application. So there's 6 steps which I'll go through now. So first of all, you'll need to register on our website. As I said, this is unfortunately still using our old system of making an application. So you'll need to go through, register with, you just put in your email address and your company. That will then prompt an email to be sent to you with a username and password, which will give you access to a secure FTP site. If you do need to apply for multiple projects, you can contact our support team and they can set you up with a second FTP login and a unique application number. Obviously, remember, you can only lead on one project in this competition, but if for any reason you do need to have 2 applications, then you can get in touch with us and we can help with that. So then once you've got access to the secure site, you can go there to download the finance form, which I mentioned just now, and any other documents relating to this competition will be on there. And then you can log into your own secure area. You'll then need to complete your documents, so you'll have the application form which will have been emailed to you once you register, any appendices that you're submitting, and then your finance form for each partner and any JES forms for any academic partners in the UK. It is important that you don't change the format of those documents, by the way. If you submit a PDF, we can't send that out for assessment, so do make sure that you keep the formats as we've sent them to you. When you're ready, you'll need to upload your documents, so you sign into the FTP site with the details we've given you and upload all of your application documents up there. If you realise you've made a mistake or you want to upload a newer version, that's fine. We won't take anything until the deadline's passed. So once the deadline has gone past, then we'll take the latest versions of the documents that you've put up there, and that's what will be sent to the assessors. So just to recap, the things you'll need to submit are application form in the Word document with your unique application number on it, which will have been sent to you. Partner finance forms for all collaborators, both in the UK and Colombia. Appendices, so appendices A to C are optional, although we would obviously recommend you make the most of that space to help to support your application. And then appendices D and E are mandatory. And a JES output document for any UK academic partners. So the assessment process for this competition, so you'll submit your applications to us. We'll review those to make sure that they are eligible for the competition. And then all eligible applications will be sent out to our assessor pool. So our assessors come from a range of backgrounds. They're from both industry and academia, and they will have been selected for their knowledge of this area. And particularly, there will be people with experience in international development as well. And Tom and his team will make sure that your application is seen by people who have the right expertise in your area to understand your project and assess it. In terms of what they're looking for, clear and concise answers. So I would say answers that answer the questions that are in the guidance. Often I hear assessors say, it's a really good idea, really interesting project, but they didn't give me the information I needed. They didn't answer the questions that we were asking them, so I couldn't give them a good score. So give yourself the best possible chance by making sure you read the guidance, make sure you've addressed all of the points that we're looking for. Not too much detail, so again, make sure that what you're telling us is relevant and is answering the questions, and you're not sort of going off on, it might be very interesting, but if it's not relevant to the application, then there's no need to include it. Try to avoid any assumptions, so again, don't leave gaps in your application where the assessors are having to do guesswork about what it is that you're trying to do. So make sure you're as clear as you can be. Quantify and justify any claims that you make sure that things are backed up with evidence. And they're really looking to see that you've got the right people, a really good idea, and you're going to be able to exploit that project and make it really successful. So once we receive your application, it goes out to the assessors. It'll be looked at by 5 assessors, and then we will take the average score of those 5 assessors and look at that ranking of all of the projects. And as Ian said earlier, we may look at the portfolio of projects to make sure that we are funding good quality projects across a different range of technologies. So just briefly to go through what happens if you are successful. So you'll receive a conditional offer letter within 3 to 4 weeks after we've told you that your project is successful. We'll ask you to return some documents to us, including a financial forecast and a detailed project plan, which is what we'll use to monitor your project. Our internal project finance team will carry out some checks on your costs, so they will be making sure that you are a legitimate company and that you're able to match fund your proportion of your costs, and also that the costs that you've put into your finance form are eligible and they don't breach any state aid rules. And if they've got any questions, they'll be in touch with the contact for that organisation to clarify those. And then once everybody's happy, we'll issue you with the grant confirmation letter. You sign and return that to us, and then you can start your project. So you can't start your project until that letter has been signed. You won't be able to claim for any costs incurred outside of the start date. You will receive feedback on your project from the assessors who reviewed it, and that will be uploaded to your FTP site within a month of us notifying you whether you've been successful. So all applicants will receive that, so hopefully, whether you're successful or not, hopefully that will give you some really valuable feedback on your project. You'll receive a conditional offer letter, as I said, so that just summarises the various sections of the offer letter, and there will be a template of that on the FTP site if you wanted to have a look at it in advance. We've already mentioned the collaboration agreement, so just to stress again how important this document is, and you do need to have that in place before you can start your project. So we have asked for a draft version of that to be submitted with your application so that we can make sure that that is getting to a mature stage early in the process, so that it doesn't hold everything up at the end if we've told you you're successful and then it takes a long time to work out that collaboration agreement. So as we said, we don't mandate what you need to put in there, but we need to see that there is one signed by all partners. Okay, that takes me to the end, and then I think we've got video next, and then we'll take Q&A about everything afterwards.
So what will happen next is that we have a Q&A session now. We can ask questions from our speakers who are in audience. If you would like to ask a question to Sia, to Andy, the process we have is the miracles of technology will not work in the same way that we planned. So all questions you would like to submit, I would ask you to email to my colleague Jess, and I will put your email address on these boards during lunchtime. Please email your questions, and Jess will compile them together and send to Andy, and Andy will email back the responses, and we will read out and have a discussion at 3:25 about it. So it was not feasible to do that, sort of to connect him later. But if you are interested in discussing a project or looking for specific partners, I'm more than happy to collect your questions and send to Andy and the team, and they can help you. What I was also going to say is that this capabilities document, which was sent to you yesterday, we will share that with Andy and the team. And when you express an interest, I'm looking for Colombian partners in such and such areas, they might be able to suggest some and email back to you. So if that's okay, so you agreed to share this, so that's what will happen. It will help them to match what he was saying.
I'm Kamal Jissoor from Sank Agro. We have an interest in agro-energy. What is the position of this particular project in relation to agro-energy projects?
So I think if you look at the scope documentation, I think we're looking primarily at the agri-food side of things. So if there's a way in which it would potentially add value to food production systems, that could be within scope, but I don't think this is looking at a sort of an agri-energy emphasis. So we'd probably need to speak with you, understand what your thoughts are, and then give you sort of specific guidance. But it could be if that's the sole output, that's not primarily what we're looking to support through this initiative.
Okay. Edgar Blanco from Anero Technology, the UK. We are considering a project that implementing, basically choosing 10 users in Colombia and installing equipment there, digesters. And will the cost of the assets, leaving the assets on the ground, will they be counted? How could they would be?
Okay, so I mean, I'll pass over to colleagues. In terms of if it's capital infrastructure, that would be a potentially eligible cost, but what we would do is we'd only pay for the costs and the depreciation of that asset, if you like, during the lifetime of the project, if I've understood you correctly.
Yes, because that would be 18 months, but the idea is that the asset lasts for 10 or 20 years.
So we wouldn't want it back at the end of the project to put in Swindon HQ or anything like that. So it would be your asset. So the costs that we could cover would be the grants on the use of that asset during the project.
Okay, I know, but the asset would be left to the farmer or to the ex-guerrilla member or whatever it is. To be left.
That's right. Yeah, but so it wouldn't
be covered. It wouldn't be covered.
Yeah, but just to be clear, we would pay for the cost of it during the project, whatever the residual value of that asset would be, would need to be met by the project partners, if that makes sense.
Hello, my name is Dr. John Gordon from Glasgow University. I have a couple of questions. We have two projects that we think are in scope. One which relates to development of novel insecticides for fruits and high-value crops, and the other is pest control and aquaculture. I presume both of those would be within scope.
Yes.
And can I ask a procedural question in a sense? Is there a minimum proportion of money that needs to be spent in Colombia versus the UK?
No, I don't think so. For the ODA eligibility, no. We need to make sure there's at least one Colombian partner, and it needs to be very clear how the primary outputs of that project are going to benefit people in Colombia.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, my name is Dr. Yauza Ibrahim. I'm the founder of Proficient Research, Innovation and Development. I want to find out what is the current state of certified organic farming system, of organic farming industry in Colombia. Thank you.
Okay, so I think that question's probably better for SEAT. So I suggest that we put that in via email, and then Andy can come back to you on that. He's better placed to answer that one.
Rolf Kramer, AgriCompass. I have two questions, it's just technical. One is about other cost. Andy is talking about the marriage. Some marriage ends with legal aspects, but this case it will start with legal aspects, and that's especially for a collaboration agreement. If we are talking about sustainability and ownership of IP and commercial rights, especially for SMEs, it can be quite challenging to finance all the legal costs in order to have a contract, for example, with a university or research institute that is not used to any commercial thinking. So in order to put that commercial contract together, maybe you are looking at legal costs of £10,000 if you have a good advisor and have put some thought into a collaboration agreement. Would that be covered in other costs, or how do you see that? Question one. The other point is that the UK and Colombian partners, do they fall under the same financial rules? That means 70% funding for Colombian for UK SMEs. Does that apply also to Colombian partners? Is that the same? Because sometimes that is different. Thank you.
Yeah. So I think on the second one, yes, that's the model that we're looking to adapt. So we want to see skin in the game, if you like, both on the UK side and the Colombian side. That's following the same process that we ran for the DFID Catalyst. Just trying to second guess, we recognise that that can be challenging, but we do want to see that there is funding, so the percentage rules would follow the same in the UK and Colombia. On the first one, I'll liaise with competition colleagues. I appreciate, again, the points you're making about costs, but I think those would not be covered. Those would need to be put up front, so we'd need to see the collaboration agreement in place. And I don't think that those would be eligible to get claimed back, if you follow what I mean. I'm just going to
Yeah, Tom's right. Unfortunately, you can't claim for costs around collaboration agreement because that would happen before the project starts. So those wouldn't be covered.
I said, but they can be quite substantial and very important, and there might be a big burden for SMEs.
Yeah, understood. We hear what you're saying. I think the way that things are currently operating, that's something that is not possible to claim back as the system's set up.
My name is Dr. Gustavo Ramirez from Ridgeway Biologicals. And my question is how relevant is or how important is that target last user or benefits of these projects go to users in conflict areas, especially how important is that the final user should be a small female farmer, let's say, in post-conflict areas or in conflict areas?
So I think the steer we've had, certainly from colleagues at the Foreign and Commonwealth Office, that's something that they're particularly looking to see. I don't think that that means you can't consider projects which aren't ticking those boxes, if you like. What will happen is when the applications go in, they will go out to peer review by 5 independent assessors. They will be briefed on the competition scope, so they're looking at projects that have the best potential to benefit the areas that have been highlighted. But I think if you're looking outside of that, it's not necessarily a prerequisite. It's things that the ultimate funders that are working with us are particularly looking to see. But I think the advice would be that if you've got other projects that you believe are going to have an impact, it doesn't mean that you shouldn't consider them and put them in. I think that would be my steer and advice. I don't know whether, Kenan, you want to say anything else? You're nodding, so I'm assuming you're comfortable with that.
Hi there, I'm Kenan Pillay. I'm the head of our global portfolio at Innovate UK. The only thing that I wanted to add to Tom's comment there is that you mentioned specifically around women and gender, and I think that one of the key expectations around this, because of the genesis of the fund, is that everybody genuinely considers what the gender impact could be. So, you do not have a gender-blind approach. I think we did want to see consideration around what the impacts could be. If there are none, or if they're limited, or if they are positive, then I think it'd be really important to raise those. Otherwise, I totally support what Tom's just said.
And I think there is the caveat that if they're not considered, we do have the right to mark it as being out of scope. So.
Hello, good morning. Thank you. I'm Nicolas Rojas from Imperial College. My question is about the funding scheme for academic partners in Colombia, because it's not clear if it's 100% or 80% or so. Yeah, well, to know about it.
So, I mean, the research-based partners would be funded at 100%. The JES system, the 80%, is because there's an opportunity to get funding from what I think is now Research England. So they would be fully funded. They're not expected to make up that additional 20%. Yeah.
Yes, so my name is Yoza Ibrahim. Second, I have 2 questions. First, is it mandatory that I have to have partners? Can I do my own project just by myself?
No, it needs to be collaborative. So as we said earlier on, you need to have, the minimum is at least 1 UK and 1 Colombian partner.
Okay, this leads me to the second question. What do you mean by UK partner? If, for instance, I want to carry out field trials and I want to compare organic production system with a conventional production system, I can't just sit here in the UK and do that. I need to be working in Colombia. And if I'm registered as UK partner, and for instance, I want to compare productivity of maize under conventional system and organic system, and probably within 3 months, I can do that in Colombia. Can I have a project that's, for instance, I can split? I have a plan that there will be time I will be in the UK, then there will be time that I will be in Colombia. Is that what the type of thing you mean by UK partner, or I can't do something like that? Is it possible?
So, if I'm understanding you correctly, you can't do anything independently. You need to work in partnership with others. If you need, as part of the project, to get out in the ground to do aspects of work in Colombia, then we recognise that this is a bilateral partnership, and things like travel and subsistence costs are eligible costs that you could put in to do that type of work. But I think we'd probably anticipate that the field trials would be undertaken by your Colombian partner or partners. You would obviously have an opportunity to work and coordinate with them, but I don't think we would be expecting or paying the UK partner to go out to do those trials. I think we'd probably anticipate in maize or whatever crop that those would be undertaken by partners on the ground in Colombia.
Okay, thank you.
Hello, my name's Sophie Jewett and my business is York Cocoa House, and we've just opened a chocolate manufactory in York specialising in Colombian cocoa, working in post-conflict areas. So one of the things that we've been doing over the last few years is establishing supply chains with Colombian, but we acknowledge that a lot of our collaborations have to be with partners in Europe based on the supply chains that we're working with. Now, I'm just wondering, we have partners in Colombia, we have partners in the UK. What's the position around collaborations with European-based partners?
That's a good question. I think the aspirations is this is predominantly to fund UK-Colombian partnerships. We might want to have a conversation in the wings about what you're looking at and how that would potentially integrate into the project. I think by exception, if it's absolutely critical to the project and you can justify why that would be ultimately going to have a bigger impact and benefit to Colombia, then that would be eligible within the ODA rules of funding as I understand them. But I think we're primarily looking to establish UK-Colombian partnerships here in the first instance. But maybe if we catch up in the wings, we can talk about that one.
Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Luis Mulet from AgriTech World. My question is very simple. Is there a limit of maximum of partners? Because we already have 6 partners. Is there a limit for?
So we're not prescriptive. There's no upper limit. I think the only advice I would give you is the bigger that the consortium becomes, the bigger the challenges, let's say, on project management might be, particularly if they're new partnerships. So there are no hard and fast rules on that. Just don't underestimate or under budget project management costs and what that time and resource would mean for you as the lead partner. But if you can justify what everybody's doing and why they're critical to the project's success, there wouldn't be any upper limits. We would want to make sure that everybody is having a critical role. There's no redundancy. We used to say, don't carry any passengers, so don't just bring your mates along because you've always worked with them. We need to be very clear about who's doing what, why they're contributing to the project, and why their role is going to be beneficial. So, the funding pot, if you like, is finite around the different total project costs. And the more partners that you have, the more you're going to potentially eat into that as well.
Yes, my name is Jessica Ocampos from CamNexus in Cambridge. I have 2 questions. Do you have any priority or definition about the post-conflict areas? And secondly, about the partners in Colombia, particularly for the academics one of research, if there are any, do they have to submit an independent or separate proposal or registration system, or is the only one here in the UK?
So, sorry, you just repeat the first question. I think the first one's probably more suitable for SEAT in terms of
there is any definition or particular priority for the conflict area.
I think, again, if we put that in with SEAT, we can try and get Andy to come back with you. I'm not aware of anything I can give you now. I think the second one is going to run a single application process. So it's not like Newton, if you're familiar with that, where we've got dual funders. This is funding from the Colombian Prosperity Fund programme. It will be reviewed through the Innovate UK processes, but in partnership with SEAT and others to make sure we've got the right assessors.
Okay, I would like to close now the Q&A session. I am aware there are more questions in the audience. I encourage you to find our speakers later. So this is also the end of the recording for this event, which will be available to anyone to view later. The later part of the event will be not recorded, but presentations will be made available. So what will happen now? We are a few minutes delayed to our networking break. So you please enjoy the coffee and tea and conversations, but I would like to ask you to be back here in the room no later than 12:10 so that we can do our networking session. Thank you very much for all our speakers present today, and as far as I'm aware, they are all still here. Yeah, thank you.